This happened during the time my driver's license was suspended. After work, I was over at my friend's house. This was my mate that I used to live with in the apartment building. It was a 5-minute walk away from work, so that's where I would usually end up. I hadn't organised for my dad or my brother to come and pick me up from work, so I thought I'd message my other mate to come and hang out with us, and possibly give me a lift home afterwards. But unfortunately, my mate couldn't come over because he was working back late. I was in a bit of a situation now. I really needed to go home because I had something planned early the next morning, which I needed to be home for. There was no one else left to ask, plus it was getting late, so I didn't want to bother my dad or my brother. My mum won't drive at night time, so she wasn't an option anyhow. I ended up calling a taxi and we started out for home. By the time we got out past the airport, I was checking the counter reader. I only had $15 to spend and it was already at $13. I informed the taxi driver that I only had $15 to spend on taxi fare. He quickly pulled over and told me I had to pay and get out. "But sir, I only live 5 more minutes up the road. Couldn't you just drive me to my street at least?" "Sorry, can't do that. I have another ride waiting." I paid and got out of the taxi, and then he quickly did a U-turn and drove away. I was in pitch darkness where the taxi had left me. There were no street lights because I was out of town now. There was just bush and swamp on either sides of the road. Luckily, I had a flashlight. I was walking along the road and I was actually a bit freaked out. I never thought I would have to do this walk in the dark. A few cars would pass, but they would all keep driving. I crossed a bridge that crossed a creek that runs off from the river. I knew I had made it a third of the way home now. I then passed a road to the right and I noticed a car was parked there. I thought it looked a bit sketchy because the car wasn't lit up or anything. It was pitch black. I started to walk faster just in case someone was inside of the car. As I came to the next stretch of road, I was power walking because I knew I would be home soon. Although I noticed the car was now driving towards me and it wasn't going at the normal speed like all of the other cars I had seen were driving at. It slowly drove past me. It was the parked car I had seen just earlier. They kept driving, and I kept power walking. As I approached the next bend, the same car was driving back in the other direction. As it approached me, it started to slowly pass me again. This freaked me out, so I started to run. I was on the last stretch of road before I reached my street, and that same car had turned around and had started driving towards me again, but this time it slowed right down and it was driving at my running speed, driving right up next to me. I was freaking out at this point. I just hoped nothing would happen. The car then started to speed up and took off again, and it didn't come back. I quickly ran up my street at full speed. I kept looking behind me to make sure the car wasn't following me again. I was safe, and I had arrived home. The next morning, I told everyone what had happened. My dad said that the taxi driver should have drove me to our street at least, but he didn't. My mum didn't want me walking out on that road at night time again, so my visits to my mate's place after work were to stop for a while, as Mum and Dad made sure that they would pick me up after work. Not long after that, I got my driver's license back, and I got my freedom back as well.